In Europe, small arms fire killed fewer than 1 in 4 American combat dead. Artillery killed nearly 2 in 3. Rifles, machine guns, snipers. They were not the reaper on that battlefield. And yet, the man running upright across no man's land, the one with a red cross painted on his helmet and stitched to a white brassard above his left elbow, was somehow one of the safest men in the line. Until the Ardennes, German troops generally chose not to shoot him. The popular version of why is simple. German snipers, the story goes, had orders: never aim at the cross. Because the moment a medic went down, the American infantry would stop fighting like soldiers and start fighting like a vengeful god. They would halt the advance, get on the radio, and call in something the Germans had come to fear more than anything else in the Western War: a time on target. Multiple battalions of artillery, timed so every shell in the air landed in the same second. An entire grid square turned into a moonscape before the dust of the first round had settled. There is no captured document that contains that order. No German general's memoir confirms it. But the fear behind it was absolutely real. And so was the mercy. This is the strange, fragile, undocumented arrangement that kept the man called Doc alive on the Western Front. And the moment it broke. Lorraine, 8th of November, 1944. A 23-year-old technician 5th grade named Alfred Wilson is moving through open ground outside the village of Bézange-le-Petit when a German artillery shell finds him. He is hit badly. He refuses evacuation. For the next several hours, under continuing artillery fire, he crawls between wounded men of the 328th Infantry, treating one, then dragging himself to the next, then the next. When he is too weak to crawl, he calls instructions to untrained riflemen, telling them how to stop bleeding, how to splint a leg, how to apply a tourniquet. He bleeds out on the field. The men he talked through it counted at least 10 of their own saved. 8 months later, his mother received the Medal of Honor. Wilson was an American company aid man, the unarmed frontline medic of an infantry rifle company. The Army called him a medical aid man. The men called him Doc. He carried no rifle. He carried an M2 medical bag and a Unit 3 pouch. Inside, Carlisle bandages the size of a paperback book. Tubes of sulfanilamide powder, the wonder drug of the war, poured directly into wounds to fight infection. Morphine in a single-shot squeeze tube called a syrette. Tourniquets, splints, glass bottles of blood plasma which, in a Belgian winter, he had to tuck under his armpits to keep from freezing solid. His only protection was a 3-inch red cross on a 4x18-inch white cotton armband. Sometimes a second cross on his helmet, on a white circle, large enough to be seen at distance. He carried a Geneva Convention identification card stamped with his number. Around 830,000 of those cards were issued during the war. When a man went down, the call went up the line. A single word: medic. And Doc ran. Everyone else hugged the dirt. Doc ran upright, because the wounded man would not survive otherwise. The 1929 Geneva Convention, signed by 47 nations including Germany, declared medical personnel non-combatants. They were to be respected, protected, allowed to do their work. Geneva was paper. What kept American aidmen alive on the Western Front was something the United States Army's own medical historians later wrote down plainly. They put it this way: as had been true since Normandy, German troops, at least until the Ardennes offensive, rarely engaged in aimed fire at aidmen, litter-bearers, or Red Cross-marked medical facilities. Infantry of both sides, on many occasions, temporarily ceased fire or made short local truces to allow their medics to clear casualties from the field. This was not chivalry, it was reciprocity. Both sides bled the same color. Both sides knew their own wounded would die without it. After 2 months of investigating shootings in Normandy, American commanders concluded that, with isolated exceptions, the Germans were honoring the convention, and that most of the medics being hit had been hit on their unbrassarded right side because the single armband was hard to see from the wrong angle. That is when American aidmen started wearing two armbands and painting crosses on all four sides of their helmets. The clearest moment of the arrangement is a name most Americans have never heard: Hurtgen Forest, 12th of November, 1944. A wounded American soldier is lying in a German minefield known to its makers as the Wilde Sau. He is screaming. He cannot move.
A German lieutenant named Friedrich Lingfeld of the 275th Infantry Division gives his men a direct order: do not fire if American corpsmen come to recover him. When the Americans do not come, Lingfeld leads his own men into the minefield to rescue the screaming American. A mine takes him. He dies of his wounds the same day. In 1994, the veterans of the American 22nd Infantry returned to Hurtgen and unveiled a monument to him. It is, to this day, the only monument an American unit has built to a German soldier on a Second World War battlefield. That was the convention at its purest. That was the world the man called Doc moved through. But mercy is fragile, and mercy was not what made the German frontline soldier afraid. The American army that came ashore in 1944 was, more than anything else, an artillery army. Each infantry division had 4 organic field artillery battalions, 3 of 105mm howitzers, 12 guns to a battalion, 1 of 155mm, and the division could borrow more from Corps, 8-inch guns, 240mm monsters. What it could do with them was a thing called a time on target. The math is simple and the result is horrifying. Batteries firing from different distances time their shells so that every round in the air from every gun lands in the same instant on the same patch of ground. There is no warning whistle. The first salvo is the deadliest because surprise is total. By the time a man hears the shells have already hit. A forward observer with a radio could put rounds on a target in about 3 minutes. If he needed to escalate to division, add another 3. To Corps, 3 more. In Italy, one Piper Cub spotter reportedly called in 5 Corps-level missions in a single hour. This was the weapon the German infantry came to dread above all others.
Lorraine, November 1944. Opening the campaign, the 12th Corps Artillery fired 21,933 rounds in 24 hours. Outside St. Lo, the 2nd Infantry Division alone fired up to 20 time-on targets in a single night to keep German defenders from sleeping. Mortain, 7th of August, 1944. An SS-led counterattack, codenamed Operation Lüttich, drives toward Avranches, trying to cut off the American breakout from Normandy. About 700 men of the 2nd Battalion, 120th Infantry find themselves cut off on a piece of high ground called Hill 314. 2 forward observers from the 230th Field Artillery Battalion, Lieutenants Charles Bartz and Robert Weiss, can see the German columns moving in the valleys below them.
For 5 days, with German tanks and infantry attacking the hill, they call down salvos onto the 2nd SS Panzer Division and the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. They shatter the assault. They break the spearhead of the German counterattack. Of the 700 Americans on the hill, only 376 walk off it. The 30th Old Hickory Division received a Presidential Unit citation for the stand. German prisoners interrogated after Mortain, after Lorraine, after the Hurtgen, said the same thing. They had never experienced artillery like it. The Chief of Staff of the German 7th Army, General von Gersdorf, said the Hurtgen fighting was worse than anything he had seen on the Russian front. That was the threat the man with the Red Cross moved under, a threat that did not need to be spoken aloud. So here is the part that does not quite match the legend. There is no captured German order telling snipers to spare American medics. There is no diary entry, no after-action report, no general's memoir that says we did not shoot the cross because we feared the guns. What there is instead is 2 facts that live next to each other. The first fact is that on the Western Front, regular German infantry mostly held their fire on aidmen because they wanted the same restraint when one of their own went down. The second fact is that those same German infantry were quietly terrified of what American artillery would do to them if the Americans had a reason to put steel on a grid square. The two facts reinforced each other. A sniper picking off a medic was not just breaking the convention, he was painting a target on his own platoon, on his squad, on the men sleeping in the foxhole next to him. The forward observer who watched the medic go down had a radio, and he had something on the other end of that radio that could kill 20 Germans for every American the sniper had hit. This was not an order, it was an equilibrium.
And like every equilibrium on a battlefield, it could break. Travel 3,000 miles west of the Hurtgen, and the equilibrium did not exist at all. On Iwo Jima, in February 1945, English-speaking Japanese soldiers shouted the word "corpsman" in clear American voices to bait Navy hospitalmen out into the open and shoot them down. The corpsman casualty rate in the 4th Marine Division reached 38%. American corpsmen in the Pacific abandoned their red crosses. They picked up rifles and pistols. They fought. On Okinawa, on the 2nd of May 1945, a Navy corpsman named Robert Bush, attached to the 5th Marines, held a plasma bottle above a wounded officer with one hand while shooting at attacking Japanese soldiers with the other. First a pistol, then a carbine. He killed 6 of them. He lost an eye doing it. He was 18 years old. He received the Medal of Honor from President Truman 5 months later. There was no Geneva on Iwo Jima.
There was no convention at Okinawa. There was only the wounded man and the corpsman and the rifle. And then, in the Belgian winter of 1944, the European equilibrium broke too. 16th of December 1944, the Ardennes. The SS spearheads of the German counteroffensive did not honor the conventions their regular army had quietly kept. On the 17th, near Malmedy, men of Kampfgruppe Piper machine-gunned 84 American prisoners of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion in an open field. The same week, 11 black artillerymen of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion were tortured and murdered by 1st SS troops near a village called Wereth. After that, American restraint cracked too. Unofficial orders went around the line: take no SS prisoners. On the 1st of January 1945, American soldiers at Chinon shot dead a number of German prisoners in reprisal.
In Bastogne, on Christmas Eve, the aid station of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment took a direct hit from a German bomb. A Belgian volunteer nurse named Renée Lemaire, who had spent the siege caring for paratroopers, was killed in the blast. The paratroopers wrapped her body in a parachute and buried her themselves. The mercy was gone. When the war ended, the American Army had something it had not had before. On the 1st of March 1945, it created the Combat Medical Badge, the first official decoration for the unarmed man who had shared every hazard of the rifleman without ever firing a shot. Until then, the company aidman had been ineligible for the Combat Infantryman Badge and the $10 a month combat pay that came with it. Some infantry companies had quietly passed a hat and paid their own dock out of their own wages. 6 American aidmen in the European theater would receive the Medal of Honor. Hundreds more received silver and bronze stars.
Many of those medals were posthumous. Alfred Wilson, the technician who bled out talking riflemen through tourniquets in a Lorraine wheat field, has a barracks named for him at Landstuhl, where today American military doctors treat the wounded of newer wars. Friedrich Lengfeld, the German lieutenant who walked into his own minefield to save an American he had never met, has a monument in the Hurtgen, paid for by the men he had been trying to kill the day before. The thing they had in common was not nationality, or uniform, or rank,
or even the convention they were both moving under. It was the wounded man between them, a man who would die unless someone got up and ran toward him while everyone else stayed flat. That is what the Red Cross actually was, not a magic shield, not a sniper directive, not a guarantee. A fragile, undocumented mutual recognition that on most days, on the Western Front, the man who would not shoot back was the man both sides needed to live.
Until the day it wasn't.